रोहन जी नमस्ते। हिमांशु जी नमस्ते।
नमस्कार नमस्कार।
संग्राम भाई आराम करंतु सातुटा गेला। अश्विन भाई भी अछन। अश्विन भाई टिके कैमरा ऑन करंतु।
So we can start, is it?
Yes.
We can start, is it? So good evening, Jai Jagannath to one and all, and we have gathered here today to discuss about the inevitable horror in Afghanistan and the Taliban 2021 has been a year of disorder for Afghanistan. An omnivorous and ominous word which covers the violence, indiscipline, and unrest. Afghanistan is a country whose history repletes with the ironies. August 31, dawn in the Kabul. United States as well as the international community completed evacuations and their citizens, Afghan partners from the Afghanistan, bringing down the curtains on very controversial and heavily criticized pullout. And ultimately, all hell broke loose on August 15 when the Taliban rolled into Kabul, much earlier than the estimated by the most intelligence agency, Afghan government figures, the media, security experts, including those based on the US. Now, all these things probably everyone knows about it. Ultimately, the banality of evil has come to us with a strange poignancy, and this is the very reason we all have gathered here today to discuss about the Taliban taking over Afghanistan and its implications for India. The topic of the evening is Taliban at doorsteps and implications for India. And today we have two eminent speakers who probably, not probably, why probably, it is actually they require no introduction at all, because they are respected, revered professors of their own field. At least the students will vouch for itself that they are the people who the time and the future time as well would reckon that they are the experts on this field. One eminent speaker first is our own Ashwini Kumar Mahapatra. He is, I mean, probably every student in the JNU knows about him. At least when we discussed about him yesterday night, then all of us agree that he probably would be the one of the top-notch analysts of the present topic tonight. He belongs to the faculty of School of International Studies, SIS, and is an outstanding teacher with over 25 years of teaching and research experience. He has successfully guided research works over 70 PhD and MPhil scholars. Apart from the book on foreign policy of Turkey, Continuity and Change, he has also published a number of research papers and articles in the referred journals, edited volumes of the periodicals in the leading newspapers of the country. He has presented over 100 seminars, papers, special lectures, and a keynote and valedictory address at research institutes and universities within the country as well as outside the country. Two of his edited volumes, co-edited volumes, revisiting Hill Valley connections in Northeast India and decolonizing the Indian mind, exploring the possibilities, are under publications. Professor Mahapatra was the visiting professor of Chow University, Tokyo, Japan 2009, visiting fellow of Master Science Delhome, Paris, France in 2008, and European Union EU visitor to Brussels in September 2009. Professor Mahapatra was also appointed in June 2017 as the member of Indian Council of Social Science Research in New Delhi for a period of 3 years. He was nominated in the March 2018 as the member of the Society of Maulana Abul Kalam Azad Institute of Asian Studies, Kolkata, by the Ministry of Culture for a period of 5 years. He has served as member of various experts committee of the University Grants Commission and member of selection committee of ICCR for the chairs of the Indian studies in leading universities abroad. He is also the member of the Institutional Advisory Body, Department of Advisory Board of the NCRT. New Delhi. Executive Council of the member of the Punjab Central University, Batinda. External member of the Faculty Selection Committee of several central and state universities. So, ladies and gentlemen, that is what I was telling you, that he requires no introduction, and I mean it. And the second notable speaker of the tonight, again, requires little bit of introduction, but he has an impeccable integrity and known among the circle of students, teachers, and among the professors. His name is Professor Satish Kumar, and presently the Professor of Faculty of Political Science, School of Social Sciences, IGNOU. He has done his PhD in International Relations from JNU, New Delhi in the year 2001. He was the former professor of Dean, Central University, Haryana, and has worked as Associate Professor, Center for the International Relations, Central University of Jharkhand, Ranchi, as Associate Professor, Department of Political Science, Central University of Haryana. He was the then Dean, School of Arts, Humanities, and Social Science, Central University of Haryana, and Head of Department of Political Science, Central University again, Chief Proctor of the Central University of Haryana, Coordinator of Center for the International Relations, Central University of Jharkhand, Ranchi, and Member Executive of the Academic Council of the Central University of Haryana. He has authored several books, India and its Neighborhood in 2014, Central Asia and India, Issues and Challenges 2017, हिमालय की सीमावर्ती देशों में चीन की घुसपैठ, sorry, my sincere apology, भारत की, because it is written in English, so I'm so sorry. So India China major disputes, Nepal Bhutan Tibet 2016. He has also published number of research papers, India and Bhutan relation, new challenges, and the list goes on and on. The challenges of the governance and the security of South Asia, South Asia Study Center, University of Rajasthan, National Seminar on February 2011. India in Emerging Asia Society for the Social Empowerment, New Delhi National Seminar on 28th March 2012. So, ladies and gentlemen, today we have the audience among us. Most of them belongs to, I would not say intellectuals, except me, everyone is intellectual, but they would eager to hear the real intellectuals who are the professors and have achieved everything in that short span of time. And over to our Tapas Bhai, who would definitely take a little bit of time from all of your precious time to introduce our organization and a brief about what we do and what activity we are into. And Tapas Bhai requires, of course, no introduction. He is actually the backbone and the front bone of the Rashtriya Boudhik Manch, and at whose instance probably all of us have joined, all of us, carried this activity together. And over to you, Tapas Bhai, to have your own, say on this aspect. Thank you.
Thank you, President Mr. Sangram Patnaik ji, for your guiding us, always been a source of inspiration. A renowned advocate of our country, having a standing of more than 25 years in Supreme Court of India and High Courts of various states, and specialization in commercial law and corporate law, practiced in many TV debate, columnist, teach corporate law in prestigious University of India like Symbiosis, etc. Rashtriya Boudhik Manch RBM is an independent registered non-government non-profit civil society organization based at New Delhi. RBM prime motto is capacity building and service delivery to disparate and marginal people of the society. In first week of November 2018, a group of educated, dynamic, and like-minded youth working in Premier Institute development sector, corporate, government sector got together to establish an organization for addressing the most urgent and pressing need of people of Bharat. To through this spirit, the organization was named Rashtriya Boudhik Manch (RBM). As a nationalist intellectual forum, RBM have conducted many seminars, panel discussion, talk in Premier Institute of India. Topic covered mother tongue and nation building, MSM sector in economic boosting and post-COVID phase, India-China face-off at LOC, new farm laws, a big loop forward for Atmanirbhar Bharat, many more. Speaker are Honorable Minister Pratap Sarangji, Honorable Minister Vishweshwar Turuji, Sri Bajendra Pandit Vice President of BJP, Major General G.D. Vakshi, Defense Expert, Dr. Ashok Mahapatra, many bureaucrats, various former Secretary of Government of India, and many eminent speakers from various fields. Based on our discussion and outcome by speaker and audience, we have taken up with concerned authority to implementation. Besides that, RBM stand shoulders to shoulder country in COVID pandemic period, especially first and second lockdown period. Our members on road and distributed 30,000 cooked food packet various slum pocket in Delhi. Within 24 hours of the Pulwan terror attack, RBM had organized a candle march at India Gate. RBM fairly believe in collaboration and bonding in society, for which we have organized two Paribar Milan for like-minded family in Delhi. So, all the above point and outcome archive, the aim and objective of the RBM is faster pace. The future plan of the RBM mainly set up world-class school in nearby needy and poor student of Bharat, provide accommodation facility for poor and needy patient nearby AIMS New Delhi, many more. Today, we are fortunate having the virtual gathering of intellectuals who are earlier waiting to listening our honorable speaker, chief speaker, Professor Asin Kumar Mahapatra ji, Dean SIS JNU, New Delhi, Speaker Professor Satish Kumar ji, Political Science in IGNO, New Delhi. I don't want to barrier among to all of you. Now I request to our Joint Secretary, C. Dr. Shailendra Kumar Swine, to the theme of the today topic. Mr. Shailendra ji.
Good evening to all. As a protocol, I have been given that I should give some introductory remark on this topic. First of all, the day US declared its troop withdrawal from Afghanistan, ending 2 decades of war against terror, everybody knew that Taliban will take over Afghanistan. But it will take some time. And one US think tank even predicted that Taliban will take at least 90 days to capture Kabul. But to the surprise of all, forget about months and weeks. Within a couple of days, Kabul fell to Taliban. Its president Ashraf Ghani fled, and some 3 lakhs trained professional Afghan security force didn't even fire a bullet to thwart the Taliban takeover. As the whole world watched this with dismay, people in India in general and security establishment of the country in particular were very much concerned and worried with the disturbed development in our immediate neighborhood, because we have a lots of stake in Afghanistan, be it regional security, geopolitics, trade, culture, infrastructure, condition of minorities there, splinter effects on Kashmir, etc., etc., which will be deliberated upon very soon by our esteemed speakers. So because with this concern in mind, RBM, whose motto is nation first, thought that intellectual deliberations and discourses could be conducted on this issue. To that effect, this webinar is being organized, and we are fortunate that we have with us acclaimed academicians, stalwarts, Professor Ashwini Mahapatra and Professor Satish Kumar, to deliberate upon the topic. We will do a press release on the webinar and we will send a brief note on the main takeaway from our learned speakers and send them same to the concerned ministry, which will certainly help them for their current and future Afghan-specific foreign policy formulations and implementations. Without being a barrier in between your speakers and you, I now request Professor Satish Singh to enlighten the August gathering on the issue. Professor Satish Singh.
Thank you. Thank you. Let me express my sincere gratitude to the organizer who provided me this opportunity, and mentors like Sangram Patnaik ji, Professor Ashwini Mahapatra. I can also see respected Bhavani Dikshit. These are the people who I think, not me, but many of us like, mentored and shaped our intellectual strength. So this is, I'm extreme. I thought it to be a participant of this gathering, but somehow organizer has given me a little more space to be a speaker on this occasion. So I'm really express my sincere gratitude. Here I thought to hear Professor Ashwini Mahapatra, who's like a mentor, who taught me and who is still in constant touch, shared his ideas and motivate me to do certain academic work. But let me begin with this. This is a very important theme for India from every respect, from nationalist perspective, as a citizen and as a researcher of international politics. What is happening in Afghanistan is, for all of us, is a very disquieting situation and a moment to underline how to bear it out. There are certain symmetries which I can identify. Many people say that it was all of a sudden, it was very shocking, it was not expected, but I believe I have written a couple of articles in the newspaper where I narrated almost 2 months or 3 months back that is exactly is going to be. Means the way Doha dialogue and that deal was not a peace deal, it was not agreement at all, it was complete out and out surrender that has been proved from 2020 till today, and it has been shown in the way on the way itself, the way America has run out from the field, surrendered and given every ounce and ammunition to the Taliban. So that one indicator that this time the external forces which were operating in Afghanistan for maybe more than 3-4 decades are in a completely different picture, in a different team up. So what are the kind of changes we see? Russia used to be a very strong force whenever things happened in Afghanistan. We can identify 1979 when Russian forces went there, established a puppet government. Najibullah in the early 1989 when Russia withdrew its forces, Najibullah himself was so powerful at the time, continued as a leader, as a president for more than expected period of time the world thought of him. And finally, Mujahideen in the form, they gathered their momentum, captured Najibullah and hanged them publicly. But he continued to resist the power, which is almost the same in component today. But this time it was all of a sudden apple cart was dismantled, and very surprisingly Taliban captured the power, and all things happened. As a researcher, when I track these events, what do I find that the world has failed to understand the political structure of Afghanistan. Most of the countries' external forces seen Afghanistan in the prism of nation state. But exactly, I believe, and while reading some of the components and the recent changes which have taken place, prove this fact that Afghanistan is not a nation state. It is basically and fundamentally is a tribal state. And when it is a tribal state, when we call it a tribal state, is combinations and structures are not the same as we see, as it has been perceived by the Western lenses of nation state. There could be different nationalities controlled by a sovereignty and central sovereignty, as Britain, America, or any European countries. They impose the same thing in India, Pakistan, and many other parts. So this is the kind of parameter which we identify of nation state, which completely failed. And the component of the nation state is a military action, military structure. What do we see? The structure of political structure of the state, where they drive, the driving forces are missing out the elegance and commitment to the Taliban. What do we see? When American forces came in 2001 after the Twin Tower, most of the Talibanis, those who were there on the side of Taliban, they became the part of Afghan forces when it was led by America and NATO. Exactly the same thing happened when America ran away all of a sudden without giving any notice to the people and the other external powers. Same forces which were in Afghan forces, they completely out of 10, 9 surrendered and became the part of Taliban forces. So their elegance and commitment was not to save the nation state, to save their nation and nationality, but to their tribal identity. So they are guided by their own elegance to their very small segment. So when we try to identify the structure, what do we see? There are more than hundreds of the sub-tribe and tribal communities. They live together in the different segments. From the North Hazara, where the Panchshil crisis is going on, they are resisting the Masood, who used to be the very strong force in the first phase, before the first phase of Taliban in 1996. They are still resisting it. But what I believe now, the external symmetry, the external powers which were used to be very strong in 1996 in the first phase are completely different today, and the combinations are also different. Unfortunately or unfortunately, what do we see? It is against India. Against India. Why it is against India? Because one very loyal and committed friendship between India and Russia has also slipped out. Now Russia is no more neutral. It is on the side of China, and when it is on the side of China, it is with Pakistan. So the current scenario which is going on, at least it will go on in the I think in the coming days and months. Maybe Afghanistan matured itself, Taliban matured itself in terms of political and social structure. Everything will be guided by Pakistan, because Pakistan was the country where it has given a shelter. Pakistan was like a Dumuha Saab. It was working with Taliban, at the same time also showed in its commitment that it is on the side of the NATO forces and with America. So the Pakistan structure and designing, at least for the first phase, has proved very successful, and it has, when it has been proved very successful, it is a very detrimental for India, at least for till Pakistan holds the card in Afghanistan. So Haqqani network and all structures are being designed and protected and motivated by Pakistan, which will continue to go on. My second important notice and understanding of the whole issue is about China. China is going to be little different. China does not see Afghanistan merely in terms of the nation state and military initiative. What it does, it see, it is looking at Afghanistan through its own vested, complete economic vested interest. So anything goes wrong, in Afghanistan against the interest of China, it will be very repulsive. And as it has shown in the first phase, when Chinese envoy was being attacked by bad Taliban, when Pakistan calls good Taliban and bad Taliban, which does not follow the tracks of Pakistan, are regarded as a bad Taliban. So that will continue to happen because there are many fragmented groups within the terror structure of Afghanistan, and there are some Pashtuns are with Taliban, with Pakistan, some are against them. So that terror group will continue, and Pakistan will remain the epicenter of this, I think, the activities. So what is my finding and my thinking is that this is going to be the defining moment in world politics as well. As America has run away and China is not very systematically silent, it is not very aggressive in positioning to take over Afghanistan and that Central Asia. It is moving very slowly, as it has been informal talks and with China, Pakistan and Taliban are already there. We will attack, but we will safeguard your interest. We will not venture into Xinjiang. We will not propagate and your Muslim population in your area. So you are safeguarded, but let's say the other areas we are going to we are going to attack in phase wise. First we will take control of Afghanistan, then in the surrounding areas of South Asia, like Kashmir would be the next target, and not only Kashmir but Bangladesh and South Asia, maybe Sri Lanka, maybe other parts would be on the radar of this terror organization. So this is going to be a very difficult moment. The difficult moment in terms of defining terrorism, and terrorism which has been steered in South Asia. So South Asian Muslim combinations factors are very dangerous than Southeast Asia, dangerous than Middle East. So I believe that in the coming days and months will be a very difficult time for India. India had an option in 1990s when it was asked by Najibullah government to provide a military assistance, but India denied it, and over a period of time India did not become the part of it. Historical blunder has been committed by first Prime Minister when this POK was completely was given to walk out to Pakistan, and that is how the whole game plan was changed. We had a border with Afghanistan through the POK. Wakhan corridor is there where China and other factors are. So our strong point by our political mistake had been snatched away, and it is surrendered to Pakistan and external power. Now the things that they have made a network, they have weaved a very strong structure cutting across India's point, where India's most important part of Ladakh and Jammu and Kashmir are located. Things has to be seen at a close eye. India as an emerging power, this is the defining moment for India to how to safeguard it, how to react if any kind of action, any kind of terror acts takes place. Can India behave like America to hit it out through whatever means if it is being done? If surrounding areas of in Indian subcontinent like Bangladesh, where India-Bangladesh relation is moving in a very high speed and economic ventures have been created, if it has been tried by Pakistan to break it, to stop it, our terror outfits are spreading in the surrounding areas in Nepal, Bhutan, Sri Lanka, that would be very detrimental for India. So for India, it is not merely an onus to safeguard Jammu and Kashmir, but to safeguard its surrounding areas as well, which is called Indian subcontinent. I'm again very thankful to the organizers, and here I was there to hear my mentor, my teacher, Professor Aswani Mahapatra, not to express too much. So once again, I'm extremely grateful that opportunity is given to me. There are many seniors where I can see some of my classmates with whom I lived in JNU, which I can see the faces and some of juniors. So it was a very nice, a very soothing opportunity for me that you provided me to get connected and express my thought. It is not deliberations, very academic. What I see through the prism in the last few days, which I have written in the popular newspaper in terms of article. So I'm extremely grateful to the organizer that opportunity is provided to me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Satish ji, for enlightening the August gathering. So, especially you have dwelt on the issue with special focus on its background of the issue involving various powers, regional as well as global. You have also aptly labeled Afghan state as a tribal state rather than a nation state. So, and most importantly, you have elaborated also about the role of external powers with regard to the present day Taliban, the dynamics of which was totally different compared to the late 1990s Taliban. Surrounding areas of South Asia is the next target of Afghan Taliban, especially Ladakh and Kashmir. And also, you have aptly told that it is the duty of India not only to concern about its own geographical boundaries, also the neighboring countries, which are very much vulnerable for this Taliban either ideological or physical takeover in that sense. So really, you have very well deliberated, you have enlightened the August gathering. Thank you very much. And now the wait is over. We are eagerly waiting to listen to one of the most prominent experts in geopolitics, in security, peace, and conflict studies, especially Professor Ashwini Mahapatra.
Thank you.
He is not only a very good academician, but whenever in JNU, whatever we all have asked for, he is always there for us in JNU. So with that, I request Professor Ashwini Mahapatra to deliberate the August gathering. Professor Mahapatra.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sadender, and the intellectual platform that you have formally launched. And thank you, Mr. Tapas, also for inviting me here and sharing my thoughts with you. My presentation would go beyond the general understanding of the Afghanistan crisis, of what most of you have been hearing in the television debates, basically analyzing the day-to-day developments. And but this is basically what I'm going to share with you are my own reflection. And somebody could just simply call it a kind of loud thinking. But nevertheless, it's based on my little bit of reading of the geopolitical situations around the country and across the world. First of all, you need to understand why it happened. The first question is why. Why? Somebody mentioned at the President, Mr. Patnaik, when he rightly mentioned the whole hell broke. It just suddenly flared up in just a matter of 7 or 8 days. The great Afghan army collapsed without putting up a fight or any kind of resistance to this march of Taliban. How it happened? Some speculate or that could have been a kind of unheard dealing with the Americans. Only the question of timing. The Americans did know ultimately this army would collapse and President would flee the country. But why it collapsed? Was it because of the Doha Agreement initiated by President Trump way back in February 2020? But now the Trump supporters come around and say the Doha Agreement never gave this kind of license to Taliban. Forget about the timeline part of it. And in fact, there is a clause. Anytime the other party doesn't adhere to the terms and conditions of the agreement, and there is an escape clause that could have been nullified, but it never happened. The second question, why President Biden was in such a hurry, regardless of the chaos it created. So underlying all that you have seen, as a student of international politics, what I find here is regardless of which administration, which party in power, whether Democrats or Republicans, since 2009 onwards, in the aftermath of the fiscal crisis of 2008, American political actors, policy analysts, they have been trying hard to recalibrate their global strategy. Nobody these days talks about the unipolar moment, the American century, all this glib talk about American preponderance, the America as the new empire, empire strikes back, all these things you don't hear in any of this article coming from America or any Western capital. This is because the Americans by and large realize it would be increasingly difficult for them to sustain the overseas military operation, or the role that America used to play is called the overseas balancer, right? So this explains why you had a series of such a decision from the American administration, right from Obama administration 2009 onwards, what was branded as the exit strategy, whether it was in Iraq from 2009, then 2013 and 2014-15 in Syria, just to withdraw the American presence, leaving the field wide open to the Russians, even to the Turks, and finally Afghanistan. So it is well predictable because Americans are finding it quite difficult to sustain, largely because of the diminishing economic or the material base of America. Okay, since 2008, the fiscal capitalism crisis across the world. And what has happened here is you have the gradual rise of China. The China, in a way, has posed a huge challenge so far the hegemonic status of America was concerned. The Americans always consider the international post-World War II international system is nothing but American system. International politics, the discipline is nothing but American social science. Look at the kind of arrogance. Look at the kind of hubris. Should this all simply begin to melt away when they realize that China turned out to be kind of free rider. The international system, economic system provided by the Americans benefited China more than Americans. Right? Today, Americans are constantly being challenged by a rising power. So you have a different dynamics emerging. It is called the hegemony challenger dynamics, which is the dominant trend so far international politics concerned. To cut the story short, the Afghanistan crisis is nothing but a symptomatic of a larger issue, larger problem. That is the declining power of America. The American analysts even today are reluctant to accept the reality. They keep saying it is not American declining capacity, it is faltering American willingness to act. Americans are not faltering. Americans are showing categorically their limitations. You understand? Now, from there, you come to the next phase. What is the Indian response? So at a time when international system passing through the transition phase, where the domination or dominant status of America is being challenged by China, and where you have undefined formation of new alliances, like China, Turkey, Russia on the one side, we keep hearing it, or Pakistan for the one side, and Western countries to an extent, India, America on the other side. But these are, I said, well noted, well defined, the way we had that kind of bipolarity at the height of Cold War. So even the alliance formation is still at a nascent stage, undefined, and it's not clear. Too much of ambiguity surrounding the formation of alliance as such alliance system in world politics. So given the uncertainty, or what somebody would call the state of flux that international politics today, extremely difficult to chart our ways, okay, and to have a kind of definite trajectory so for India's foreign policy response to the multifarious challenges are concerned, whether it is in Indo-Pacific or in AFPAC region, the South Asia for that matter. So Afghanistan crisis in a way has amplified the security challenge so far India is concerned. In what way? This is important for us to know. One, as I said, at global level, you have a power transition, and along with that, attendant with the power transition, we have the political uncertainty and ambiguity. One. So the first challenge is how do you deal with this kind of ambiguity and uncertainty? You do not know what America will do next. What are the Russian behavior tomorrow? I'll just give you the one example here. You had the peace talk in Moscow. India was not invited, right? Because the Russians were not quite happy with India getting closer to America. So President Putin decided in a way to sideline India, so far the issue of Afghanistan is concerned. Then you come to America, when the whole Doha peace agreement was going on, the Americans never thought it imperative to involve India. Even at a given point of time, then President Trump, who is incidentally quite popular in our country, went to the extent of saying, what has been the contribution of India? He forgot about our $3 billion it's spent by the Indian government in the infrastructure development, which includes the parliament of Afghanistan. And India even today tops the list. So far the country being favored by the general Afghans. So look at the kind of pool of pro-India sentiments that we have created in the last 20 years. But the net result is, because of the undefined, ambiguous nature of international politics today, it is difficult to determine who is with you, who is against you. Who is your friend, who is your rival or competitor, and who is your enemy. Enemies are well defined. You understand? Who is your ally and who is your detractor? Very difficult to determine today. That is directly attributed as I explained, the preeminent or the predominant characteristic of a contemporary international politics, which is called the power transition. So this kind of ambiguity will prevail for some time. That's one. Number two is, with the change of government, complete takeover of Afghanistan by the Taliban, who the entire world called as the terrorists. What are the implications? Regardless of the terms of reference, so far this Doha agreement was concerned, regardless of what President Biden did or failed to do, the net result is Taliban are back in power. Who are the Taliban? They are the exterior terrorists. If the international community, there are quite indication today, if you read the recent United Nations Security Council resolution, where it decided not to mention Taliban as terrorist, quote unquote. So it shows there is a kind of willingness on part of some of the leading actors of the international community to confer recognition on Taliban by saying, this is the reality, you cannot remain blindfolded to the reality, you have to accept the reality as it is, right? In case leading powers, international community chooses to accord recognition to Taliban regime in Afghanistan, then what would be its fallout? The fallout is we are ready to confer legitimacy to a band of terrorists, thereby sending a message to all such outfits active across the world, do whatever you want to do. Once a peace deal is struck, then we are prepared to accept you, we are prepared to embrace you. Are you prepared to do that? So that's a billion-dollar question. So how can you afford to ignore or simply remain blindfolded to whatever they did? The way they came to power, by force, the kind of acts they indulge in today, even after capturing power in Kabul. So that's one aspect. That's a really serious technical, theoretical, and empirical questions. And that, I believe, is a serious predicament for the scholar and the policymakers of the leading powers of the area concerned. That's one aspect. In case we decide not to give recognition, then what will happen? Afghanistan would slip back into the state of what was called before a collapsed state. A collapsed state in a way creates sufficient opportunities or the scope for all kinds of nihilist or such radical outfit to come there and start operation and start the training and get the logistics from outside, from the putative mentors like Pakistan. So thereby, non-recognition involves the risk of creating condition in Afghanistan today conducive to global phenomenon of global terror. So I'm quite clear in terms of presentation. Look at the dilemma facing the policymakers today. That's one. Number two, what is this serious challenge to Indian security? Now look, so far India was struggling to cope with what I used to call 2.5 security threat. What was 2.5? China, Pakistan, and half inside the country, represented by the separatists in Kashmir, to limited extent in northeastern part of India, and the Maoist in central part of India. That is the half. Now, instead of 2.5, in the years ahead, Indian government will be struggling with 3.5 security threat. You have a 3, if at all Taliban regime is consolidated with the international recognition pouring in, there's a possibility of Afghanistan joining hands with Pakistan. The possibility, as Professor Satish Singh rightly mentioned about that, about the Haqqani network and all the factions being patronized and continuously supported by Pakistan, both ideological and material. There's a possibility these two countries coming together along with China. And the third, their supporters. Their supporters, again, you'll find in the intellectual community and across the country. Then you have the separatists, some form or the other is going on in Kashmir, in other parts of India. So that's in place of 2.5, you will have a 3+1/2 security threat posing, security threat posed to India. In other words, it does complicate your response to this multiple security threats which are well connected, or you say organically linked. Then obviously then you look for the support. Where do you think you'll get support? As I mentioned, American enter policy is changing. And as I mentioned, the whole Afghanistan crisis is nothing but a kind of symptomatic of what Americans are going through today. So if you study the statement of President Biden, or if you study the President of Trump's, you don't find much of difference, except the slogans. President Trump talked about America first, Biden talks about America back. So what does it mean? Nothing much. That means no longer Americans are interested in what I call the deployment beyond the borders of America. They consider the involvement abroad unnecessary, wasteful, okay, and they are nothing but a drain on the limited resources. So President Biden's response is, look, if there is a kind of terrorist threat emanating from Afghanistan, any part of the world, whether in West Asia or Sub-Saharan Africa, then President Biden thinks of imposing sanction, diplomatic boycott. Do you think this kind of measures would be effective? Extreme position, what President Biden may be contemplating, is to have a deployment of, say, between 200 to 2,000 American troops, either in Pakistan, to meet with this kind of eventuality, as the American has done it in Iraq. Till date, we have 2,500 combat troops present in Iraq, even after the withdrawal in 2011. They're completely withdrawn, but in the wake of the rise of ICS, they were brought back to Iraq, and still you have the Americans troops present in Iraq. So that's the only thing the Americans can, conceivably implement it or put into effect is the deployment of a tukla, a small contingent of combat troops on the Afghan-Pakistan border. Now, what flows from this? What flows from this is, look at the role played by Pakistan, whether it was in the entire peacemaking process with the Taliban, or between Taliban and the government, Ghani government in Afghanistan, or afterwards, to ensure security, stability in Afghanistan. Pakistan still features prominently in America's scheme of things. Thereby, Pakistan happens to be the biggest beneficiary so far as Pak area is concerned. Now the American policy reflects dualism. Indo-Pacific, they need India to counter China. APAC region, they require Pakistan at the cost of India. So the American foreign policy approach is incoherent. You understand? So how do you deal with the incoherency? There has to be some kind of link between the overall American strategy. That is missing. The result is The result is where the Indian policymakers look towards. So you find often hearing the Indian Foreign Secretary saying, "Oh, there was a kind of discussion with the Taliban representative in Doha, or some people met in Washington D.C., but no comprehensive discussion so far. So we are not very sure what the Taliban response or the Taliban so-called initiative in terms of rapprochement with India is concerned." So these are some of these practical aspects that I just now highlighted. On the whole, to cut the story short, as a huge policy dilemma so far Indian response to the aftermath of Afghanistan debacle is concerned. And second part of my lecture is, how do you see Taliban? Many of us consider Taliban simply as any other so-called non-state actor qualitatively transformed into a state actor. So that's the distinction which was analytically drawn between the non-state actor and the state actor has practically, of all practical purposes, disappeared. It's not being blurred, it's simply disappeared. So this Taliban is not simply an, how do you categorize this? Is a kind of not simply a violent political organization or a body or entity. I say it's not only, it is. It appears to be a kind of organization which a committed cadre with a set of policy practices in terms of getting logistics, training, recruitment, funding, and of course with the support from certain countries like Pakistan for the last couple of years, and prior to that Saudi Arabia and certain Gulf countries. But it's an organization I mentioned. If the organization captures power, what would be its policy? What would be its response? What would be its foreign policy behavior? And how, in course of time, likely to entail the huge risk or security risks so far India is concerned. That part I discussed. Now come to the last part of my presentation. I see Taliban more than simply an organized entity. It represents a soch, a thought, idea, ideology. That is more important. Its impact would be more enduring, long-lasting than simply the what I call dismantling or say suppressing the bodies, the groups which represent this ideology. So you talk about Taliban, some people mention about Al-Qaeda or ISIS, they say very nominal presence in Afghanistan, but they're product of the same ideology. You understand? They're product of the same ideology. What is central to the ideology, very important for you to appreciate. If you find a couple of their supporters openly, publicly making statement in India today, they may not like Taliban per se, but they do subscribe to the ideology that Taliban represents. You understand? That's very important. When Taliban spokesperson says that they have right to talk about the Muslims across the world, including Kashmiri, so it means this is reflective of the source of which it is a product. So you need to deconstruct and understand the various aspects of the thought, the ideology. So it is ideology which is manifestation, violent, quasi-violent, semi-violent, non-violent, but the ideology remains the same. What is that? The central to the ideology is the most dominant discourse among the Muslim intellectual, that is the division between self and other. Self represents the Muslims. Self represents Islam. Self represents the superiority of Islam over other. Other represent the West, the Judeo-Christianity. And they say this other is decadent. This other demise is inevitable. And this feeling of superiority of self is endowed with some kind of sanctity, sacredness, right? And the people who fight for it, they are given to believe that ultimately it is self which will be victorious. The victory of the self is inevitable because the other is weak, it is decadent, it's corrupt, it is first losing its moral the core moral values, because of the westernization, because of the free mixing of the sexes and all kinds of things. So in that kind of confrontation, acts of terror, demonization, dehumanization, acquire legitimacy. Okay, acquire legitimacy. So there are groups who said, oh, we don't have to resort to violence to achieve this. So you may call them moderate, because they say as long as you remain religious, adhere to these practices and the norms, so like you are also contributing to the dawn of that era, dawn of the age when ultimately Islam would prevail across the world. But there are people who say, no, we don't have the patience. We want to do it fast. So to achieve it, to accomplish it faster than others, there is such violence. That is this kind of killing. Okay. So what is important for us to understand is not whether Sharia is introduced in Afghanistan or part in Pakistan or not. It is to constantly engage people who subscribe to this kind of ideology, saying there are fundamental problems which need reform in your thought process, in your ideas. Understand? So that's one way of doing it. Second, of course, way of doing it is to eliminate groups which carry out this kind of ideological perspective, and they try to put into practice by resorting to inhuman acts of terror. Okay, dastardly killing of others, so-called non-believers. They need to be taught the whole revolution, whether it is Taliban revolution or so-called Al-Qaeda-led revolution, ISIS-led revolution, has resulted in killing of the own community than others. It has had a debilitating impact on the respective society. Look at Afghanistan today, the humanitarian issues, humanitarian problem it is encountering today. So, to put it briefly, Taliban capture of state power in Afghanistan has presented multiple challenges to the international community on the one hand, and to India in particular on the other. There is no easy solution. There is no, what I call ready-made response to the multiple challenges, like Hydra-headed demon, that's Taliban. Because that's what you have to bear in mind is Taliban is not simply an entity, an organization. It represents a source, a thought, an idea, ideology. That needs to engage constantly, comprehensively over a period of time, if at all you want to defeat this kind of thought in order to ensure peaceful coexistence of different community. Thank you very much for the patience.
Sir, for your very lucid analysis of a very complex issue. So I have never ever heard in any foreign policy issues being deliberated, and especially complex issue like Afghanistan crisis right now, in which the role of UNO, America, Russia, China, and all other regional and global powers, and how you have discussed all in a very specific context, with their specific roles, how they're playing it very safely, and who is the real gainer at the end of the day. You have already well said Pakistan is the real gainer, the US is the loser, and especially, and India also is in no position to get any benefit out of it. So with that, so you have discussed about hegemony, challenger dynamics, then role of specifically China, Turkey, Russia, Pak. That analysis. Am I audible, sir?
Can
Yes,
we
you are
take some questions, please, on the lecture we had just now?
Am I audible?
Yes, you are
Yes.
audible.
Yeah. So Professor Mahapatra discussed about China, Turkey, Russia, Pak. That nexus rather, and in one side and Western nations, and including also in India and others on the other side. So especially you have really dwelt very well so far as security threat to India is concerned, and the now the the Western money and manpower, and that's why so it left. So, and most importantly, you have very well dealt with the ideological aspect of this issue. So that is very important. So and also you have dwelt upon how Taliban from non-state actors to state actors, and whether actually change something in that process, and their modus operandi, their origin, how they grew, and you have dwelt upon very well on all about this, and especially their role in Kashmir and other areas. Like you have told that they are, though they are camouflaging the fact that no, we want to business with India side by side, there is a statement that we are going to speak for all, including Kashmir. So that Virodhavas, that contradiction, that reflect the real. So thank you for enlightening us in all these issues. Thank you very much. Mike to Tapasji for the next proceedings.
Thank you, Sailendraji. Just I want to introduce a few eminent audience joining this call. IFS Mr. Madan Mohan Sethi, Council General to India to Vietnam. Dr. Rajendra Prasad Das, Vice Chancellor, IGNO, New Delhi. Professor Husika Senapati, Director of NCRT, New Delhi. Mr. Bhavani Dikit, Senior Journalist, Journalism. Due to short time, I am unable to introduce and join many intellectual in this call. Now I request our own Vice President, Dean of IIT, New Delhi, Professor Sukumar Misra, to conduct Q&A section, question and answer section. Over to Sukumar Misra.
Good evening to all who are present in this meeting and the lecture session. Am I audible? My internet connection may be a little bit jittery. Is it fine now?
It is
Absolutely
fine.
fine.
It is fine.
Yes, sir, you are audible. Yes, sir, you are audible.
So it's a very nice session and a brief discussion about the international phenomenon, about the Taliban issue was very interestingly explained. Now I am opening the floor for the question and answer session. So maybe are you getting the question answer in the chat box, Tapas?
Yes, we have get two question. One from MS Man. We need to ensure what that India does not become a breeding ground from the radicals that most
Can I speak,
things.
please? That's my question. That's my question.
Yeah,
Am I
yeah,
audible to you?
you can.
Okay.
Yes, you are audible.
First of
Yeah,
all,
yeah.
HS Man, and I'm very thankful to this organization for at least taking a step, understanding that yes, there is a threat, and highlighting that to people. It's a wonderful step. I salute you for this initiative. Okay. Now I have heard what our honorable guest spoke, expert spoke. What other nations do, what other countries do, I think we have very small control on that, and let us leave it to our foreign ministry. Okay. I think, and as I heard, this organization is planning to do a lot of charity work and set up hospitals and set up schools. I think there are multiple organizations doing that. Uh, that should not be the real core of the work that you do. Your real core of the work should be now to awaken people against this imminent threat of Islam. What are we as an organization doing to awake people on this clear emerging threat? And I'm very sure that the next target is India for them. Okay. Now, what are the issues they're facing here? Number one, we are all divided. Okay, while a particular community is a minority community, the rest all are divided, fighting amongst each other. What are we, as this association? What are we doing to do certain things to make people come together, increase the spirit of nationalism, so that they stand together, elect the right kind of the government who can take tough steps to ensure that India emerges a survival in this war, which will ultimately, which is aimed at ruining our entire civilization. Okay? So we should look at what we should we form help groups, should we form interactive groups, should we form delegations, should we do more of these kind of seminars? What are we doing as this particular unit to spread that awareness and bring people together to fight against Islam? Second, how do we ensure that the seeding does not happen here? I'm sure there's enough seeding already there, but now that is bound to go up. How do we ensure that India does not become a breeding ground for Taliban or the IS, Khorasan, whatever? So these are the few concerns which I thought I should ask you, and then take your feedback on that. Thank you very much.
May I request the panelist member to respond to the questions, if any?
May I say something, Tapan Bhai? May I continue whatever the question has been addressed? My point of view.
Yes, you can.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. I think it is a very genuine concern that we need to whatever we are doing here today is generating awareness among the people, reaching out to the larger section of the society through our perceptions. We are too much aware about Pakistan, but we are very less aware about other areas of South Asia, whether it is Afghanistan or China, which is called Southern Asia. So we need to develop this kind of India's core strategic and threats, perception which are emerging from the adjoining areas. We need to have a very strong network. Network means the people should be taught, people should be tutored, people should be made aware of it, aware from the hardcore military or strategic threats are emerging. And at the same time, I also believe that we need to generate awareness among the larger section. India is having the second largest Muslim populations. So this debate of hardcore Islamism and Muslim factor which are displayed in Afghanistan, there are certain implications in India as well in the regional context. So it is I think the ideal moment for them to learn about it, to modify the in the structure of India. India, I think, is the only country in the world where Muslims have so much luxury of ideas of sharing and living together. So that could be the role model that creating a
Hello.
strong, vibrant nationalist perspective. If it is from the other side of the community, it will be always better for this country as well. And penetration of any terror groups in India will be less.
Hello, Tapas. Any other question, comment? Go ahead.
But I feel my question is not answered. What he explained is what we want to happen. But how will that happen? What we as people should be doing? What is our strategy to ensure that there is no internal support to those external extremists? What will this organization, which is RBM, what are we doing? Sir, we need to ask these tough questions. Just by having a seminar or webinar on highlighting international issues will not help.
Organizer will,
We
sir will deliberate upon it.
See, these are not, let me tell you, these are not wasteful exercises as such, holding discussion or anything, because a lot of things get cleared. You understand? Because if you simply go by the stories being published by the print media, what you hear in, television discussion, these are all meant to, condition your mind to think in a specific way. That is one. So this kind of webinars are meant to dispel some of these misgivings, some kind of ideas, that you normally allow them to develop in your mind, being influenced by this kind of narrative through the print media and electronic media. So you get a chance to have a critical thinking, critical reflection. One. Number two is functioning in India. We have certain restriction. I think we have a lawyer with us, Mr. Patnaik, he'll tell you, because certain language you have to be very careful. Because I've been in JNU for a long time, I know. So you have to be quite wary of uses of terms, terminology. Otherwise, there will be allegation against you, there will be kind of lawsuit against you in the court. Sometimes we face difficulty in, finalizing the title of a curriculum or even a course. To you, it may appear meaningless, but the person who does it gets into avoidable problems. Okay, so we have to be very careful when you present a particular idea in a kind of language which is acceptable legally, or somebody who said which is politically correct. I would say not simply politically correct or legally correct. That's very important. So we can't go around saying, oh, this particular religious community is bad, this religion is bad. You have to put your things in such a way the message is conveyed, and at the same time you remain technically or legally correct in a presentation. That's
Absolutely
what I'm
correct.
saying.
I think we need to bring all communities together to increase the nationalism, the feeling of standing along with the nation. So that is, what as an organization, because as an individual, I have a limited role. Definitely, I will try to do my best. But if these kind of organization like yours, if they join hands and they give a platform to the individuals to do something collectively, that will make a lot of sense. And what I'm talking about is I'm talking about supporting India as a nation. We are multiple communities here, and every community is a vital part of this nation. How do we bring that spirit of nationalism so that the Punjabis, the Kisans don't fight against the other people, other community. The Hindus don't fight with Muslims. The Muslims don't fight with Dalits. The Dalits don't fight. So all the communities I'm saying. So if we stand together as one, as a nation, then any external threat, we are able to counter.
This will never happen. Let me tell you. You are sounding too idealistic. We have so many cleavages. The cleavages is given. You say cleavages along sectarian line, caste line, within community, between communities.
Maybe we can now
Let me
go
tell,
to the
let me
next
tell, you
question.
see, that's what I mean. I used to think when I was a kid, but in day-to-day life, it doesn't happen. And we live in a democracy. It's called competitive politics. The political actors always try to take advantage of the pre-existing cleavages.
Thank
They,
you.
they may have remained as
Thank you, Mr.
apolitical. They
Patnaik.
try to politicize. So that's the reason you have this problem. You can escape. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thanks a lot.
So maybe we can go to the next question. If any.
Yeah.
And please introduce yourself in maybe a line or so and start the question, and we will be brief because of we are running out of time.
Yeah. Myself, Dr. Jajati Patnaik. I am from the School of International Studies, Jawaharlal Nehru University. I thank the organizers of Rashtriya Boudhik Manch for creating such awareness at the present moment. Both the speakers explained very well regarding the different aspects of the Afghan crisis. Particularly Professor Rashtriya Mahapatra, Dean of the School of International Studies, We brought two narratives here in the context from 2.5 security challenges to the 3.5 security challenges. And secondly, we brought to the fore the fact is that the binary between the self and the others, the superiority of Islam and demonization of others has brought this conflict in the sense the radical Islam is the core of the problem. The Haqqani group for the present movement led by Anas Haqqani, they have tried their best to approach the Indian government and they have categorically stated that we have to forget the past and look ahead for the future. The problem is that this Haqqani group has very dubious linkages and they have support all the radical movements, Lashkar-e-Toiba, Sheikh Muhammad, Al-Qaeda and ISIS in the future. So my query and from Professor Ashwini K. Mahapatra, that should the Indian government trust upon the Haqqani group to reach out any deal in the days ahead?
Tapas, what I suggest is collect some question and comment, then we'll answer. Right? The question is about trusting Haqqani group. Yeah. Any other question related to that? Yeah.
So now, due to lack of time, probably.
Okay. So that could be the last question.
We can close the question and answer session, and I can request our President Sangram Patnaik ji to lead question.
Sorry, I couldn't able to get it. Am I audible?
Yes, yes.
Yes, sir.
So, Sukumar sir, did you say anything to me? Is it?
I just request you to start the thing for the maybe if there are some questions, because my internet is jittery.
Okay, fine.
So maybe that's why either you take up one question or maybe we can.
No difficulty. You know, that is a well-known saying in our legal field that when the main person is not available, that is a proxy counsel. So I would like to play the role of a proxy today. So, is there any other questions left? Tapas bhai?
Still not.
I'm Rahul Priyadarshi.
Yeah, please.
See, I have one question. That
Before you
Could
start
open
with your
their
question,
mic,
I would just
camera?
Rahul ji, just a small
Yeah.
request. Please be brief, specific, and please be addressed to one speaker or one who can address. So be specific, and so that we can finish it up early. Please go ahead.
my question will be to Mr. Ashwini K. Mohapatra, that or to the all the attendees also, that can we make a situation where even the liberal Muslims can join us? Because I can see that we are talking that Islam per se is teaching something which is in conflict with the coexistence, peaceful coexistence. But there is a dilemma, because see, even the liberal Muslims cannot accept that whatever is in Quran or whatever is their teaching is actually against the peaceful coexistence. But in Afghanistan, we can see that there are sufferings and the sufferers are mainly the Muslims. So here also, can we make an effort so that even the liberal Muslims can join such thought that finally the coexistence is the core of the society? Yeah. Because I can see that none of the attendees or members here are Muslims. I think my question is clear, sir. Ashwani sir.
Yes, yes. Shall I answer? Right.
Yeah, please.
You're very right. There are liberals, and they kind of counter narrative among certain liberal scholars in the Muslim world is on. It's going on for the last 25 years. How to make adaptation to these changes taking place across the world. Basically they're coming into the new interpretation of Quran. There are also radical liberals who simply question the core ideas of Islam as such. But then they represent a microscopic section within in the Muslim world. The reason being, I'm not blaming Muslim per se. See, the reason being, my understanding is Islam, unlike other religion, revealed religion, is a political religion par excellence. Okay, so other Abrahamic religion like Judaism, Christianity, but Islam is quite distinct from the other two. Second, if you compare Islam with other religion, it is identity-driven religion. Okay, it transcends your national sectarian identities. Only about 6 or 7 years back, the Pew study had a public opinion survey in Pakistan. Over 90% Pakistanis prefer to call themselves first Muslim than Pakistani. In contrast, over 90% Indian Hindus prefer to call themselves Indian than Hindu. So that highlights the basic problem or the basic difference between our belief and their belief. Thereby not I'm suggesting incompatible, but that is a basic problem with them. So second is the redressal to this problem should come from within. It should not be superimposed on them. There should be reaction, as it happened in much of West Asia today. So whatever reforms we are suggesting, we are submitting, they have to come from within. But always there have been attempt at reform, adjustment, reconciliation. They have met with strong resistance from within the community. You understand? So, because I have done comprehensive study so far Islam and Muslim community across the world is concerned, I found that thing happening. But then as individual, each of them quite nice, like all of us, very adjustive. But when it comes to their faith, their belief, they always behave differently. So this reform or any kind of change has to come from within rather than being either imposed by a particular state or particular country or particular regime. That's my submission to all of you. But nevertheless, the liberal interpretation, liberal voices are often heard within the Muslim community, but most of the liberals are located not in Asia or Africa, but they're in America or the West European capitals. Second is somebody asked me about the Haqqani network, whether the government of India can trust. It's not a question of trusting. It's a question of basically reversing your entire policy approach, so far Haqqani group is concerned. So that's a dilemma highlighted, the policy dilemma, so far the Indian government approach to Haqqani network is concerned. Second, there is an umbilical cord between the Haqqani network and its patron, Pakistan. Is the Haqqani network prepared to sever the link? It's unlikely to happen in the near future. So we have to wait till that happens. But I'm not ruling out the possibility of that happening. Ultimately, this religion used or has been used historically as like a football, being kicked around by different actors. But ultimately, the objective of all these actors is power, political power, privileges. You'll find Islamist groups fighting against the regime. You'll find how Islam is used by a particular regime to legitimize. Look at Saudi Arabia, look at Iran, look at UAE. So it is, sometimes contradictory role. So it's a multidimensional role of particular religion. That's the reason at the very outset I mentioned this religion is a political religion par excellence. So we have to wait and watch. We have to be alert, or you have to remain alert, given the kind of development taking place in Afghanistan. As Professor Satish Singh said, Afghanistan tribal state. Most of the states happen to be tribal states. That's not an issue at all. The issue is what emerges as the unifying factor, what acts as a glue, which brings all groups together. Is it liberal democracy? Is it theocracy? Or it is some other identity, linguistic identity? That's very important, because Afghanistan nation-state process is not complete. When the Americans went there, they went with the purpose of what they called very loudly state building. State building never happens under occupation. It is a failed project, be it in Iraq, be it in Syria, be it Afghanistan. That is the huge lesson for the Western scholars and the American policymakers. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that what I can gather from your answer, that we have to be more defensive till the things changes from within. Correct, sir?
We don't have to be defensive. Instead, we have to be offensive. Okay. So we all of us need to learn. That's one thing, calling spade a spade. You see. So if it's happening, then we are tempted to draw parallel between subfront terrorism, this terrorism. Basically the purpose of doing is to minimize the virulence, the debilitating and the destructive impact of other terrorist groups. This is the way the politics is being played around. I have to very much, what I call alert and wary about it. So that is my important. Why are we defensive? We have done anything. That's my understanding very clear. Sanatani is dharmic. It's just, there's no other philosophy talks about past, future, past, present, and future. So it is dharmic. There is this worldly, materialistic. It's a huge point of difference. Revealed religions are this worldly, ours is otherworldly. We believe in karma, they simply give a sick to the karma. That's a huge difference. So, to draw the comparison parallel by saying each religion is prone to violence or becoming a kind of, terrorist groups, that is too much. That basically shows the lack of understanding on the part of the analyst. You can never have, let me tell you, I can challenge anybody, bet with anybody, you can never have a Sanatani terrorist group, a Sanatani as a terrorist phenomenon. You may have a vigilante group. You may have a certain groups, resorting to violence on a specific issue, but never would emerge as a phenomenon. I'm saying phenomenon, which needs to be studied, examined by the social scientists as Islam has been historically, is today, would remain so. Learn to live with it. We resign to fate, learn to live it with, regardless which party comes to power. It's very, very difficult to obliterate it and keep aside. So that's the thing you have to accept. I'll just end here with giving this last example. The most secular Muslim majority country in the world once upon a time until recently was Turkey. So, communist revolution happens to be much more secular. I tell you, iconoclastic in secular terminology, not religious terminology, than Nehruvian secularism. What has happened in Turkey in the last 10 years with the rise of Justice Party led by Erdogan. So that's, you cannot have, kind of the implementation or what I call accomplishment of a secular state structure in a Muslim majority country, unfortunately. Show me one example, maybe to an extent Malaysia, but Malaysia has its own bag full of problems. So is case of Indonesia. So it's very difficult, very difficult. I don't know how to describe it. So these are the realities that you have to accept and live with it. So if today the Taliban, day after tomorrow something else, the brand name would change. The ideology that drives it would continue. And you cannot, challenge the ideology because the majority happens to be the believer in that ideology. That's the problem. That's the root cause of the problem. Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate that. What is happening that if we will wait, that it will change from within. But what I understand and what I also read and what I analyze, that there is very, very, very remote possibilities of happening that, because with the passage of the time, we can see that this ideologues are gaining much power. So whatever was happening 50 years ago, the situation has worsened today. So really what I mean that we should be defensive, that we should be very watchful that what is happening. But at the same time, what can we do to encourage our Muslim brothers so that they can also accept that whatever is written in Quran, if something, as for example, if something is written in Gita, which offends somebody, or even in Ramcharitmanas, if something is written which is offensive to other body, and other sects protest that it is whatever is written in Ramcharitmanas is offensive and derogatory, we do not feel bad about that. And but this is not happening with Islam, that they are very rigid, and you rightly said that they are very nice people, but when it comes to the religion, they have this rigidness. Or so my dilemma here is that when I am telling that we have to be defensive, so what I want to say that unless it happens from within, what can we do? So this type of, I fully endorse this approach what you people are taking, that you are spreading the awareness. But can this awareness reach to the Muslim brothers also? That was my question, which I am also finding that from your answer that it is very difficult task, though there are the groups and there are the peoples who are liberals. Correct, sir?
Yes,
So,
it's more or less. Thank you.
in
I
fact,
think it is reaching, gradually it is reaching out. It is a very hard sell. I believe it is a very hard sell. Things are changing. They are realizing, at least in the last 5-6 years, they have come to the terms. And it is a gradual change, but I think there is a concrete changes are taking place.
Correct.
So,
Thank you.
in fact, this is what happened when the professors
Inshallah.
and the intellectuals meet. And that is, probably one night would be very, 12 hours is very short period. And today we are witnessing that the questions after questions, and people are probably hungry to join the dinner with the family. So, we are really grateful to Professor Mahapatra. And in fact, this is a very enlightened moment, particularly not that illiterate, the person like me have learned so much in that little span of time. I'm really grateful to both of you. Now I would invite our dear, our own Professor Himanshu Bose, Registrar of IGNOU, to give a vote of thanks. Over to Himanshu Bhai, please.
Himanshu bhai, you are on mute.
Unmute.
Am I audible?
Yes,
Yes,
Dada,
yes.
you are audible.
Yes. Namaskar and good evening, everybody. So it's finally all good things must come to an end, and such a good and eloquent discussion of tonight has to come to an end, and that it has to end with a vote of thanks, and that responsibility has been bestowed upon me. So I'll start with thanking our both the guests, both the speakers of this evening, Professor Ashwini Mahapatra and Professor Satish Singh, for sparing their valuable time from, despite their extremely busy schedule. I know, personally, I know both of them, and I know how busy they have been and they are with all kinds of assignments, with multifarious assignments. But the moment they received an invite from us, and they never hesitated for a moment and instantly accepted, very graciously and instantly accepted our invite, and came forward to share their expertise on the topic of this evening. Thank you, Professor Mahapatra, and thank you, Professor Singh, for your valuable time and for giving your enlightening all of us regarding the nuances of the Afghan issue and the probable responses that we could be have from the Indian side. Thank you once again. And then next, I would like to thank our the moving force behind the Rashtriya Boudhik Manch, the RBM, Mr. Sangram Patnaik, our president, and our secretary, Mr. Tapas Parida, because without their help and support and their active encouragement, nothing would have been possible, including this webinar. I mean, most of the things, I mean, it is because of their leadership, because of their initiative, that the organization keeps on moving. We are simply just the foot soldiers, but the leadership is provided by our president and our secretary. So thank you, Sangram Bhai, and thank you, Tapas, who is just like a younger brother to me. So thank you, Tapas, for all the hard work, for all the taking all the pains in organizing this webinar. I'd also like to thank, but I'll be incomplete if I'll be failing in my duties if I do not thank the eminent personalities and the guests who have participated in today's webinar, to listen to what the experts has to say, to share their feelings, to share their own inputs, and all the people. And so I thank all the participants, all the esteemed guests who have been part of this webinar in this evening. And without your presence, the glamour, the success of this webinar would have been much lesser. So thank you, all our esteemed participants, all our esteemed guests, for your participation in this webinar, which gave us the gravitas, which gave us the weightage, and which gave it the much needed, what I can say, the much needed thumbs up. We'll try, as one of our guests was asking us what we can do as an organizer to do. Actually, this webinar is just a part of a series of webinars, and at the end of the webinar, what we have decided is that we will put together the views and the expressed by the panelists, the participants, and everybody, and try to send it to pass it on across to the government, so, and to the policy makers at the appropriate level, the appropriate place, used as a input from the public domain for policy formulation. If they wish to, they may use it. I mean, we leave it to their wisdom, but we will do our duty in passing it on to the appropriate authorities in the decision-making process, so that it could be helpful in making appropriate policies at the bigger or the national level. And at the end of last but not the least, I will like to thank our back-end team, Subhasis, and all the other people who had been working behind the scenes to make this webinar a success. So thank you everybody once again, and good night, and hope to see you all once again very soon in some other webinar. Thank you and good night and namaskar.
Thank you.
Jai Jagannath.
Just last line, being an Odia and such a brilliant presentation by both professors, let me just end by saying an Odia, proverb, I would say, or a quote. Jodi lokomane, I will explain it in English also. Jodi lokomane apan ko kebal darkar samayre mane pakanti, kharap न भाबी गर्व करंतु, कारण मोहम्मती तेबे मने पड़ी थाए जेतेबेले अंधार हो जाए. The meaning thereby, we all depends upon the professors, particularly for that candlelight, where we are everywhere you find the darkness. These two professors made our evening the most brilliant light of the day. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you and good night.
Good night.
Right.